Hey guys, welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Okay, we are going to go live today and we're going to have a really special guest in studio to actually debrief some behind the scenes insider information about the Los Angeles fires. This is a perspective that I think is absolutely crucial, but maybe not a lot of people are hearing right now, whether you're on X or you're listening to or watching traditional news media. So we're going to have Paul Ybarra in studio today. He is a retired fire captain who has spent 38 years doing firefighting, and 34 of those years he has served in the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. So he's going to actually be in studio with us just here in a few minutes, talking about his opinion, his experience, what's going on behind the scenes as he sees it in Los Angeles with the fires that are raging, how the fire departments respond to them. Is there mismanagement? What's the deal with leadership, fire safety tips, so much more. It's going to be really fascinating. But before we do that, I just want to say we've been praying for so many of our friends who are affected by the LA fires. I have friends and family who've had to evacuate, people whose homes have burned down. I mean, it's absolutely catastrophic. So they deserve our prayers and our support. And I also want to say I'm really grateful for all of these amazing groups that have been popping up to show support. And one of them is our show's own sponsor, everylife.com, America's pro-life baby company, diapers and wipes. And they've been actually donating products to those that are displaced right now because of the Los Angeles fires. So huge thank you to everylife.com. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing. They are sponsors for today's episode, as well as Exodus 90. So we're going to listen to our sponsors, and a big thank you to them for today's episode. Everylife.com is America's pro-life baby diaper and wipes company. And I'm so excited to share about their new products too. I love everylife.com, and I use Everylife diapers and wipes for my little ones because these are a best-in-class product that are clean. There's no harmful dyes or fragrances or phthalates in this product. It is designed to be healthy for your little one and good for your little one's skin. And also, it's just a great design. Not only does Everylife.com sell the highest quality diapers, but they also are proudly pro-life, pro-mother, and pro-child. And that's one of the many reasons I love Everylife. If you go to everylife.com/join today, you can join the Changing Lives Club. By joining the Changing Lives Club, you not only get 10% off your monthly diaper and wipe subscription, in addition to that, you'll get a free tote bag. And everylife.com will donate a box of diapers and wipes to a mother and baby in need. And I'm excited to share everylife.com is now offering training pants for your little one. These are 12-hour leak-proof training pants, pull-ups for that little one that is maybe potty training. You got to check them out. Everylife also has just come out with their new shampoo and baby wash and lotion package. The product is amazing. I have already started to use it. And this is not only made from great ingredients for your little one, it is also tear-free and gentle on your baby's skin. And if you go to everylife.com/join today and join the Changing Lives Club and use the code Lila, you'll actually get up to 25% off your first order. So you don't just get 10% off monthly on your subscription box. You'll get 25% off your first order. That's everylife.com/join. Use the code Lila. Exodus 90 has changed the lives of thousands of men, making them more spiritually, physically, and mentally strong, and more successful in their relationships, work, and life. Ladies, this is an amazing program to share with the men that you love. And men, if you haven't tried it already, now is the time. Exodus 90 was created by men for men and offers men a path to greater freedom by helping them temporarily detach from unhealthy habits and teaching them physical, mental, and spiritual toughness. This 90-day journey, supported by the Exodus 90 app and community, connects men with accountability partners and provides daily inspiration to strengthen their resolve and encourage them down a path of self-discipline. The results speak for themselves. 99% of men who make an exodus report a greater level of freedom than they've ever experienced before. For the men in our audience, go to exodus90.com/Lila to learn more about the Exodus 90 app. That's exodus90.com/Lila. All right, you guys. So welcome back to the Lila Rose Show here. For those that are joining us on YouTube Live, we're also streaming now on X for the first time. So welcome to my friends on X. And we're going to be doing something a little bit different with today's show that I think is, I hope, going to really help discourse happening right now. Headline news everywhere is about the Los Angeles fires that are raging. There's a lot of criticism right now of city leadership, state leadership in California. I think some of it is warranted. That being said, I think there is a perspective about the Los Angeles fires that is maybe not being shared from boots on the ground. And that's why I'm very excited to have Paul Ybarra in studio today. Paul is a retired fire captain who served for 38 years firefighting. And for 34 of those years, Paul was with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department as a fire captain. So he has incredible expertise and perspective to offer us. We're going to unpack what's happening, of course, with the fires in LA. Is there mismanagement? Why was water apparently running out of the hydrants? Where did these fires come from? How do we stop future fires? And even some fire safety tips for people listening. So that being said, the what we're dealing with right now, according to some of the latest reports I'm seeing, 29,000 acres damaged and destroyed, $57 billion in economic damage because of the LA fires, 180,000 people evacuated. There have even been deaths. So much to unpack here. So without further ado, Paul Ybarra, thanks so much for joining us live here.
Well, thank you, Lila, for having me. Pleasure to be here with you.
I love Los Angeles. I lived there for 5 years. You have been how many years in Los Angeles area?
All my life.
Your life.
I've lived in Los Angeles, except for 4 years when I was at the U.S. Air Force. Then I didn't live here, but this has been my home.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you, for folks who are learning about your background here, you were a fire captain. You were a fire captain too, is my understanding?
Yeah, first I started off my
means.
career as a firefighter in the U.S. Air Force. That gave me my first start. I attained the rank of buck sergeant or sergeant. Then when I left, I joined the Los Angeles Fire Department in 1987. And I was a firefighter for 9 years, called it a tailboard, so like a soldier. 1 year I was in the recruit training academy. And then the next 9 years I was a driver. 3 years as an apparatus operator, drive the aerial ladder truck. And then the other 6 years as an engineer. And then I promoted to Captain 1. I held that rank for about 4 years. And then the last about 9 years I was a Captain 2 task force commander at the fire station. 6 of those years were spent when we call them special duty. So they pull you out of the field. You basically do 4-10 schedule. That's my background.
So were you managing firefighters in Los Angeles?
Yeah. At every station I ever worked as a captain, I was a supervisor of my shift at the station.
So how many firefighters would you be managing?
Well, it depends. There's a single engine company, so they normally have an engine company and a rescue. So that'd be 6 people. At another station, I had 8 people or 7 under me. As a task force commander, there was 12 of us. There are stations that are larger, but that's what I normally supervise, 11. So at a task force, I will have the junior captain, Captain 1 with me, and then 10 firefighters, and 3 of those were drivers. So in the fire department, the rank starts firefighter, then you have a firefighter paramedic, then you have engineer, apparatus operator, Cat 1, Captain 2, usually at the station level. Some stations have a battalion commander there. I never was assigned to a station with a battalion commander. So
tell me, Paul, what it's been like for you. Now you're retired as of just a couple years ago, and you're watching really a catastrophic fire breakout in your beloved Los Angeles. And I'm imagining you still have a lot of friends who are still serving in the department and might even be active right now fighting fires. What's that been like for you over the last few days?
Well, I've tried to reach out to some, and I'm thinking most of them are busy. And I have reached some firefighters that were not working, so talk to them a little bit. But my heart really goes out to the poor persons that lost their homes. Many times in my career, I would respond to a person's home, and sometimes it's fatality or the loss of home. And that's really a sad thing to witness or be a part of, to see a person homeless. So I think one of the things that would impact me most is to see pain and suffering, and I think a lot of us firefighters don't want to see that.
I'm hearing a lot of reports from what's happening in Los Angeles. I'm seeing it from news reports, or you're seeing it live on X from people reporting even on the ground. And I'm curious how you see the current state of affairs right now with the Los Angeles fires. I know some right now I think are contained, some aren't. How do you see it right now?
Well, this time of the year, we have something called the Santa Ana winds. And that was sort of the natural phenomena that occurred in Pacific Palisades. Some people are reporting 80 to 90 mile an hour winds. And what I have the chart, if we could see that, but
Can we pull it up, Harris?
this will explain. I actually want to see the video first because that red area will prove to be more significant.
So we're about to watch a video of the Santa Ana winds that Paul's going to show us here to understand what's happening in Los Angeles right now.
Happened here? A tornado? Or maybe a hurricane? No, it was Santa Ana winds at their worst. In early December 2011, 97-mile-an-hour winds tore through Southern California. Hundreds of trees came down and about 200,000 customers lost power. California's mix of weather and geography creates the perfect, potent wind machine we call Santa Ana winds.
One of the key ingredients for a Santa Ana wind outbreak is having a big, strong, high-pressure system over the Intermountain West and the higher elevations of the Rockies. When air flows out away from that, it descends in altitude toward the Pacific Ocean, and that air descent leads to warming and compression. That also dries the air out significantly, and that wind can spread pre-existing fires.
Just like an old-school bellows, these fierce winds can quickly turn small brush fires into sprawling, raging infernos.
So there's a really peculiar thing about Santa Ana winds. It's not like a sustained wind that you might find with a hurricane. This is more of a gusty type of event where 1 minute it can be calm and the next minute you can have winds 75, 80, 100 miles per hour at times. That is the kind of wind that can do a lot of damage, not just to trees and vegetation, but also to structures.
Santa Ana winds maximize fire danger during the autumn months. That's when the vegetation is still dry after summer and before winter precipitation arrives.
All right, so Paul, talk to us about the Santa Ana winds and why this is so key to understanding what's happening in LA.
Yeah, if we could also see that the map. So in the city of Los Angeles and other jurisdictions, but I can only speak to the city of Los Angeles, we have what we call high fire severity zones. If you look at the red map there, and then look to the left and where it ends on the beach, that's Pacific Palisades. That's the route that that area, all that red area, and we have a number of areas in the city of Los Angeles. And these are places that that homes interface with wildland. So this is going to be an area more of a hazard or a threat. And historically, these fires have happened in these areas. So if we saw the film earlier where you see the wind coming through, it's coming off the hills down through there. And if you see where it's between Santa Monica or Malibu, right? That's the area that was hit. So, and as the man said, they said there, it was autumn. So right now, right after summer and right before winter. And if you get 80 to 90 mile an hour winds, there's not a whole lot the fire department can do. Helicopters will be grounded. The philosophy of the LAFD is to hit it hard and fast. So we have something called the red flag. When the relative humidity drops below 15% and the wind speeds are over 25, a red flag goes up. And there's a lot of things that we respond to. First, we pre-deploy companies, and then we limit parking on narrow streets in those areas so traffic can get through, especially fire apparatus, right? So these winds at 25 miles an hour, we declare a red flag, but can you imagine 90 miles? Okay, so I have a good friend, a retired captain, who was making a comparison between the Hollywood fire that was the next day versus the Palisades fire. We got the fire department got helicopters up quickly. They tried, but then the helicopters had to be grounded. We do not put out fires without the assistance of helicopters. So we get to the head or the front of the fire. Then there's flanks. We get on the sides if we can, if it's safe. We do something also called structure protection, the weather permitting, because we're not going to lose firefighters. We're not going to get in the way of sort of like a wind tsunami. We're not going to get in front of that. And so if you talk to firefighters that have been around, like I've been talking to a number of my colleagues, some retired, some still active duty, with winds like this, it's to be expected. It's to be expected. And if you have a home in that area, I understand that those are beautiful areas to live in, but they come with risks. That's why a lot of insurance companies won't, how would you say, insure them, or will charge an arm and a leg because of the risks.
So I want to unpack that because I think there's a lot of complaining going on, and understandably so. People already pointing fingers about why this catastrophe has happened in Los Angeles, saying this person's to blame, that person is to blame. And I want to go through some of, and I think there certainly is some leadership failures here, which we're going to get to in a minute. But I do want to get to some of the concerns that people have had that have been, I've seen kind of go viral, some of these concerns. For example, there's a concern that the fire hydrants, there's not enough water in the fire hydrants, and that this was due to some sort of mismanagement in the LA Fire Department and city, and that was somehow responsible for the lack of containment of the Pacific Palisades fire and other fires. And it sounds like one of the things you're saying is that the lack of containment of the Pacific Palisades fire, where most of these homes are just burned to the ground, had to do with winds that prevented helicopters from being safely flown in order to drop water on those homes and buildings, because that was not a fire that could be contained with on the ground fighting. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, I would also say too is that like the system was maxed out with lots of fire, and of course we would always want more water. Of course we do, but when you have that number of structures burning in that environment, it's going to drain the system, and a lot of times citizens, well-meaning, will turn on their sprinklers or get on the roof with hoses, right? Trying to, they think, like, save their house. But so imagine in your own home, turning every faucet, shower, bathtub, things, it's going to drain the system, it's going to tax the system. We have limitations, right? There's limitations on everything. And this is out of the ordinary wind event, 89 miles an hour, okay? Maybe it's 25 and we can get the helicopters up, we can knock it down, but when you can't get the helicopters up, we just sit and watch it burn, which is unfortunate, right?
You said that a lot of the insurance companies, they didn't want to give policies to families who owned homes in Pacific Palisades because it's such a high-risk area. And is that because of infrastructure, or is that because of the environment?
No, like I live in Santa Clarita, okay, and my insurance has gone up. And as a matter of fact, when I bought my home 8 years ago, I had a hard time finding fire insurance because I live in an area zoned high fire severity, right? The likelihood, right? So if you live in that zone, the insurance companies, they're going to charge you a premium, or you're going to have a problem trying to find insurance, right? Because those are high-risk areas, right? Those are high-risk areas.
Is that just because of the winds, or is there also...
It's also, okay, there's also other factors in a fire. The topography. As we saw, the high pressure comes down and it's a kind of slopes down and it pushes across, right? So topography plays a large factor. Also the fuel. So when you butt up against wildland, suburban areas, right, you're very close to lots of fuel. There's another thing too, like oak trees. Oak trees are sort of like sacred cows. You can't touch them, right? I used to have an oak tree. I had to call somebody out to inspect the tree before I cut it, and they only would let me cut it a certain amount.
So
right?
wait, this is a state policy, like California law. You can't cut your own oak trees?
Yeah, you have to, because they're preserved. I mean, I understand they're beautiful trees, but one of the things that we try to do with trees is keep the branches 10 feet from the roof line. Now, the state would let us do that, right? But let's say myself, in my own home, I've taken down 4 trees to minimize the risk. I wouldn't be able to take down an oak tree unless I could argue, but I don't think I could win, because the last time I spoke with one of the inspectors, it was going to be minimal what I could do. Another problem is how we set up homes, right? If and I understand the developers want to make max dollar, so they butt up homes next to each other. If your neighbor on the right's house is burning pretty well, now that fire is exposing your house. So it's almost like a domino effect, right? So when you place homes butted up against each other, that causes a problem. Another thing is our homes are made of wood, right? Wood burns. I know we have stucco, and there's a lot of things that we have done over the years to minimize this, right? We do brush clearance. We don't allow wood shake shingles. The eaves are boxed in. We do brush clearance. We have like we create a defensible space. Those things do help. However, the way the layout of that area is, we knew that, or a lot of firefighters know what's going to happen. But I will say one thing on a positive note, the LAPD and the fire department's planning prevented a lot of potential deaths by evacuating the people. Our job as firefighters is to save life and property. I think right now, Palisades, 2 deaths. For that many homes, it's pretty incredible, right? I know there were some problems with people blocking roads, stuff like that, but the fire department and the police department was able to, like, there were pre-designated places to go to, like gyms or schools or staging areas, right? And so firefighters, police officers would speak at HOAs, communicating to the citizens, this is where you go. So I think that's a very positive note. It's unfortunate we lose homes. We can rebuild homes. And, I've also been inspired by many of the people that have lost their homes. They seem to be more concerned about their citizens and family, which is they're in the right spot. We can always rebuild. We can always rebuild, right? But as far as like bringing back your loved ones, that's not going to happen.
It's such an important perspective and point. And I hear incredible, people are sharing their stories on social media right now whose homes have burned down, but there's a tremendous sorrow there. It's extremely sad and devastating, but there's gratitude that their life is saved, their family's lives are saved. And to your point, there have been only a handful of deaths, which is still horrific, but you're saying that's because of the work of firefighters. You're a retired fire captain. You worked 34 years for the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, just recently retired. Do you think, Paul, that there were things leading up to this moment, these catastrophic fires in Los Angeles just the last few days, were there things that local and state governments could have done differently to have made less catastrophe from the last few days? What would you, how do you see that?
Well, I think a lot of things were set up properly, right? What we called red flag, brush clearance was done.
It was done, brush clearance, because that's a criticism
Well, that's
I've
required.
seen.
The citizens have to comply with brush clearance, right? So other things sort of like having equipment pre-deployed. Helicopters, when that fire broke out, were dispatched and got on scene. However, when the winds kicked up to that speed, they have to ground the helicopters. That's a big problem because helicopters, they do a brunt of the fire. So we have a philosophy, or the City of Los Angeles philosophy, hit it hard and hit it fast. Well, they tried to do that. But 90-mile-an-hour winds, it's reported, it's going to ground helicopters. So the fire's going to get out of hand. Firefighters do not make a direct attack, meaning get in front of the fires. We kind of, on the flanks if it's safe, and then we do structure protection. So we kind of stay out of the way. This is a 90 miles an hour, moving in a direction. A story of a friend of mine, a retired fire captain. This is a few years ago. He was doing structure protection, which was meaning getting rid of dead brush, cutting trees, getting wooden furniture away from the house. And a more senior chief came in and says, "Get out of here now." So he told the strike team to leave. And he didn't want to leave because he thought he was doing good. But you get an order, you move. That area was lost. It got torched. And my friend always remembered he was really happy because of the wisdom and the authority with which the chief spoke with.
So the prioritization, of course, is people's lives. And so that's where, and sometimes, like you're saying, you just let the buildings burn because there's not a way to contain them.
Yeah. Another example was in Hollywood. The same thing happened the next day, about 4:30 p.m. Another fire broke out.
This was just a couple days ago?
The following day. Tuesday, it broke out about 10-something, the Palisades.
Yep.
And then the fire in Hollywood broke out at about, I think it's 4 p.m. Same response, pre-deployment, but the helicopters were able to do that. That was handled quickly and did not get out of hand. It could have been worse, actually, because there's just a number of people there, too. And the hills, navigating the hills and roads, it's a tough thing. People were evacuated. So that step was done, evacuated. And then the helicopters came in and did it. So we were able to get control. So the difference is wind, 90 miles an hour. When I was a firefighter and I drive into work, when the wind started to howl, I'd get worried because I knew we were going to go to work. We were going to go to work.
Have you heard from, you mentioned earlier, you've heard from some folks, but what has it been like for firefighters? I mean, these fires are still raging in LA. It's been now since, Sunday, Monday? We're on Friday now. It's a whole week of fires. How are people handling that? Do they have enough staff?
Well, you know what? The fire department has what you call mutual aid agreements. So other departments are coming in, like I've heard even Arizona has sent people in, Long Beach. So they come in to assist us, right? Now the city, this is another thing, the city is not vacant. We still have to protect the city of Los Angeles. There's a high rise, there's an airport, there's the harbor. There's still people that are having medical emergencies. There's still other fires burning. So we do not completely abandon the city. We basically kind of disperse them to get adequate coverage. So we still have them. But so some firefighters are still doing their regular routine job back at home, in a sense, in the city. But a lot of the firefighters on the fire line, they do get relief if it's possible, but it gets cold at night. It gets cold at night. Are they eating 3 squares? Not in the beginning. They're dirty. Think about using the bathroom, little things like that. Sometimes there's no cell reception. Sometimes their wives and kids are worried about them. So my heart kind of goes out to that a little bit because of the wives, they worry, right? But anyways, but some of the firefighters sleep in the hose bed. They sleep in the engine. You would almost, as time develops, maybe we can get something for them to stay at a hotel or something. But in the very beginning, they're establishing a beachhead, and it's going to be tough for some of them. Some of them may have to work 2 or 3 days in a row, depending on their schedule.
Yeah,
it's cold, it's windy. I don't know if, like lately myself, I'm retired now. When I go out, I put on a sweater, put on a beanie because it's cold. These poor guys don't get to do that, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes not eating a good hot meal. Now, the department does try, as things go on, they set up something called logistics, which gets firefighters equipment, food, water, things that they need. But sometimes firefighters are going to be there 2 or 3 days, right? And one thing is, I will always grateful to the citizens of Los Angeles. A lot of people would come and bring us stuff. And that was always a kind gesture by a lot of the citizens.
So for those who are just turning in, because we're doing this live, we've got Paul Ybarra here. He's a retired fire captain, 38 years in the fire service, 34 in the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. I'm going to take a look at the chat, Paul, and I've got more questions too, but folks are coming up with questions already. Again, there's a lot of, anytime there's a natural disaster that strikes, a catastrophe, people want someone to blame, I think, part of it. And there are sometimes people to blame. And then there's just a lot of questions and concerns, and people are interpreting events certain ways. Anyways, one person here is asking, why was the power turned off? So my understanding is in Los Angeles, a lot of people lost power purposefully. It was done by the city as part of the firefighting measure.
Well, first of all, in big winds, a lot of power lines are brought down. Even with now to brush fire, that was one of the biggest things that I would respond to, or most common things I would respond to, is wires down on a windy day, because the lines are hanging overhead for a long period of time, they become brittle, right? So you're going to lose power. If transformer lines catch fire, it's going to knock out whole sections of the town. DWP does a pretty good job. They're going to get out there, isolate power, going to try to get up power as soon as possible. But when you have power poles burnt down, lines dropped, transmission lines, we don't know the extent yet, but your power is going to be interrupted if it's above ground. Fortunately for myself, where I live, our power comes in underground. And that's something that thinkers have done to prevent these types of things from happening, right? Because when you have overhead wires, those are hazards to be shocked or to start fires.
There's a big piece of news going around on X, especially, saying that $17.6 million was cut from the LA Fire Department, I think by the mayor. And that, the concern is that left the department under-resourced. So there's not enough firefighters, there's not enough supplies. And that's one of the reasons these fires are so devastating. What do you think about that, Paul?
Well, first of all, the chief, the chief engineer, used to be called chief engineer and general manager, and the deputy chiefs would head the fire department. They had something called civil service protection many years ago. I had that when I left. All firefighters, captains, and battalion chiefs, I believe, still have civil service protection, which means, like, if I were to go against the administration, or let's say a citizen, I was trying to enforce the law, and he goes, I'm going to get you, Paul, we're going to get rid of you. I had civil service protection. This way I could carry out the fire department regulations. The chief engineer and deputy chiefs at head department no longer have that. So they're what they're called at-will employees. So when you see the chief speaking, she's very careful as what she says, because she could be gone.
She can be sued for
let go,
let go,
terminated. Because when you reach that level, you sign an agreement and you say that you now understand, for whatever reason, if the chief or the mayor wants to let you go, you're gone. So
how does that impact performance, would you say, and their ability to effectively
if you listen
fight
to the poor
fires?
chief tried to explain herself, you can see it in her face, right? She doesn't want to say anything negative about her boss, the mayor. And she's on the other side looking at the citizens, right? So she's in it between a hard rock. She's in a tough spot. So the civil service protection was taken away, I think it was Mayor Reardon. And I remember that day, a chief officer came and he goes, the fire department will change from this day on. Because in the old days, our chief officers had a spine because they knew they were protected from losing their job. That's one of the problems. So,
meaning, and when you say that, just to clarify for my understanding and folks listening, they had spine, meaning they could say the hard truth to their boss, the mayor. Like, you cut $17 million from my budget, dude. But now the fire chief can be fired at will by the Los Angeles mayor as of just a few years ago. And so now they're not going to be spitting hard truths on to the public. They're going to be really careful what they say because they don't want to make the mayor look bad.
Yeah, and a lot of firefighters would talk to me about that. And I say, hey, look, the chief is in a tough spot, going to be fired or removed if they doesn't carry out the will. You know, another thing is, too, is you keep asking the fire department to cut 10%. If you do that like over 3 or 4 years, you're cutting the budget. Now, the budget for the fire department is about $890 million, okay? 90% of that is for salaries of firefighters. So really only getting like 43, 45. You look on the internet, you can get the number. The budget for the city of Los Angeles, the whole budget, is like $13 billion. So, and most of the cost goes to fire and police because of public safety. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the fire department's going to go whatever it asks for because people can see this, right?
Now
we have
you're saying.
we have a lot of older stations. We need new equipment. A lot of times when we go get equipment, we had to go through bonds. There's a number, we have to like beg, borrow, and steal to get equipment at times, right?
Because you can't afford it. The city's not giving you enough of a budget.
Yeah, so fire trucks, maybe $1 million, $1.5 million, depending on what they're carrying per apparatus, right? And then I know they're canceling some academies, classes, but per capita, like the city of Los Angeles is not in the top 10 as far as, and I just checked this, and if somebody wants to fact check me, fine, but per 1,000 population, how many fires do we have? We have 3,000 firefighters, and I think the population is like 4-point-something million.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, so.
And you're saying that's really a small amount of firefighters compared to other cities.
Yeah, we have over 100, maybe a little over 100 and something fire stations serving, I think it's 450 square miles. That's a lot of area. The city of Los Angeles is huge. So a lot of us have thought we need more firefighters. We need newer stations, equipment, reserve. There's something called a reserve apparatus. So let's say, for instance, we get an accident or when the truck goes down, we need something to replace it or to like, you imagine if your car breaks down, you need something to do, right? We need a reserve fleet. We need mechanics. We need staffing in the mechanics. Those trucks don't continue to run. We need them to be serviced. We have brake issues, air pressure issues. There's a number of things that happen. Accidents, unfortunately, do happen.
Why? It sounds like the city of Los Angeles, the fire department is underprepared. Not necessarily its fault. It doesn't have the money to have more firefighters, have more reserves, have better equipment, even have more stations. I don't know if you can theorize this or if you want to, but why is that? Why has that happened?
Well, I'm going to tell you something too. If you think the Palisades fire was going to happen, the chief said that you could have thrown double the amount. I'm not going to quote exactly, but let's say you just double the amount. One going to stop that fire, the winds, okay? So
even more resources to LA
the
fire
wind,
department wouldn't have stopped the Palisades
right? It's
from
not
burning
going
down.
It's a wind-driven event. We're at the mercy of nature. It's almost like in Florida, you have those hurricanes come in. You send the fire departments try to stop the water. You're not going to stop this fire. It's wind-driven, 90 miles an hour. You look at the topography, the slope, right? Then you have a number of structures that are made of wood. Then you have wildland up against it, brush. I'm sorry, it's not going to stop it, right? If you wanted to stop it, don't have homes there. And you know what? I know those are beautiful places for people to live, but living there comes with a risk. And if we look historically over the past, I remember many years ago, I think it was Governor Wilson had mentioned exactly what I'm saying. If you build your homes in heavily wooded areas with poor access, many years ago, the roads were narrower. Well, the apparatus have gotten bigger. Sometimes we have a problem negotiating the roads. Sometimes, too, we have people trying to evacuate. They're coming down and we're going up, and it's sort of like a gridlock. In the Palisades fire, they had to use bulldozers to clear cars out of the way. So when you, narrow roads, tough access, lots of fuel, structures, it's a recipe, right?
Yep. So you were 34 years, the city of Los Angeles Fire Department. You are a retired fire captain. And have you seen some of the concerns going on online and reports? There's a lot of criticism online of the leadership in the mayor in Los Angeles, as well as Governor Gavin Newsom, his leadership. And one of the criticisms is about what they're calling DEI hires, diversity, equity, and inclusion hires, meaning unqualified or lesser qualified leaders or firefighters were brought into the departments, and they, it doesn't help when there's a catastrophic fire burning. When you were working for the city for 34 years as a firefighter, did you see the department change over time? Did you see some of those policies get enacted? And do you think that affected the ability of the department to fight fires?
Well, I will say that this is what I used to tell my firefighters and tell my friends. You should never be denied an opportunity to try out for the fire department, to apply for the fire department. Whether your gender, your race, your political beliefs. However, you should not just be given that job because of who you are. It's really important to have standards. The job is very physical, contrary to what many people think. You may see firefighters at the station, at the grocery store, but however, when something happens, like for instance, if a firefighter was to fall through the roof, you need somebody to pull them out. Or let's say climbing a hill or working long hours. Some of the firefighters responded to 25, sometimes 30 calls a day, sometimes 2-3 days in a row. It's a tough job. So we have to have standards. The equipment there's ladders carried on the side of a truck company. They're very heavy. And it used to be a standard that 2 people had to put it up by themselves. That used to be a requirement to get on the fire department. That was changed to accommodate a certain group of people. They added a second pulley because some people couldn't extend the ladder. That was dispersed. There used to be a size and height, and that's important when you go to grab equipment off an apparatus like a ladder. That was changed.
Why was that changed, Paul?
Because certain people couldn't get the ladders off the apparatus or couldn't raise the ladders. Because look at...
Not to put too fine a point on it, but you're saying they changed the equipment, they changed the use of the equipment over the last decade or so. And when you say certain people, is it ladies, women that aren't maybe as physically large or strong as their male counterparts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I've worked with a lot of women firefighters, and they've had great attitudes. They've worked really hard. However, with the college football going on right now, if you watch Notre Dame and Penn State that played last night, how many women are those teams? And what's more important? Fighting fire, protecting the lives, your children, my grandparents, my kids, my wife. Who do you want responding in your time of need? Do you want the most physically able, most intelligent, most mechanically inclined, most virtuous? Is that what you want? Or do you want... A friend of mine, a chief officer, he was my academy instructor, used to tell recruits that got terminated, the city of Los Angeles has a job for you, but it may not be as a firefighter. It's a hard truth that a lot of people don't want to mention, right?
Does it change the dynamics? Like you were a fire captain, you were a fire captain for years, you served for 34 years. When you have women on the team, does it, especially if they're smaller than you, which most women are smaller than most men, does it change the dynamics of how you prepare for a fire and you fight a fire?
I on a number of occasions witnessed, the inability of members, and not only women, but men too, right? The inability to do the job. Like We do training exercise. I was on a truck company. We throw a ladder, raise a ladder to the roof, go up there, and we'd simulate like it was a fire. We'd put on our turnouts, a breathing apparatus, an axe, carry a chainsaw to the top. And there was a few times that I witnessed those members with the inability to start the chainsaw. That's not acceptable. The chainsaw is what cuts a hole in the roof. It makes it easier for us. Ground ladder's not going up. The ladder's too heavy for the person, especially when you load, let's say, for instance, I'm not sure how much you weigh, but let's say that you weigh 130 pounds and I load you with like 30, 40 pounds of equipment. Now you got to push up a ladder. It's a heavy ladder. It's not going to go up. The other thing is, too, is that like, as women age, they don't age as well. I'm going to be 64 tomorrow, by the way. And I was able to work until I was 62. One of the reasons I did leave was because my shoulders started to bother me and I was starting to, in a sense, age out, right? I stayed a lot longer in my profession than Tom Brady did. Tom Brady has a tough job, but as a firefighter, I could work a little longer because they relied on my experience, my wisdom, right? My know-how to a certain degree. But there comes a point. But you're not going to find too many women like me to be able to work. And look, it's not patting my back. God blessed me with a 6'1" frame, 200 pounds. I was raised by a father. I had 2 other brothers. They were big guys. My dad always had me in sports. I went to the U.S. military. I was trained and formed by men. And I think that's another thing is like, the other day I was watching this show and it was about the Battle of Saipan. And I remember an officer, I'm not sure what rank he was, but it was a soldier giving commands for the men to move off the beach. And he spoke with authority. Sometimes you have to do that. Today, if we were to do that, we would be called insensitive. It would be bullying, harassment.
So as fire captain, you're saying there's certain things that certain tone you couldn't have or would be problematic to have because you're dealing with this more DEI body of firefighters.
Yeah, we'd call it like, socially sensitive, but like...
So like instead of yelling, like, stop doing that, it's like, excuse me, ma'am, could you please hand me the hose? Like that kind of a thing.
Well, I give you, like when I was a younger firefighter, I was yelled at and I didn't like it. I was scolded. I was brought up front and I didn't like it at the time. But when I look back, I'm very grateful to those men that formed me. Like, you're not quitting. Hang in here. Stick it here. Suck it up. I used to hear that from my coaches, from my dad, from my brothers, right? Because, when a firefighter's trapped or a family's trapped, sometimes you got to push through fear. It takes a certain amount of mental toughness. That doesn't happen all the time, but when push comes to shove, you want very capable people. I was watching this linebacker for Penn State. Guy's a monster. If I had a truck company, I want the most fit, strongest, smartest guy. Now, I'll tell you something. Just because you're fit and strong doesn't mean you're going to be a good firefighter. It also takes an intellect, mechanical aptitude. I've known a lot of firefighters who are on the big side, incredible firefighters because they're thinkers. They're thinkers. They're hard workers. They work well. They speak well. They train well. They have good knowledge base. So it's just not bronze. However, on a truck company, a lot of times it's just physical bronze, right?
Paul, are there less of that kind of, less of those types, those virtuous, tough, strong, good, 6 foot, like you said, 200 pound like yourself, firefighters? Again, you were a fire captain. You worked for 34 years in the city of Los Angeles Fire Department. Do we have less of those types of guys now than we did, say, a decade ago?
No, we still have a lot, but if we're going to backfill getting away from that, then we're going to have problems in the future. Now, I did hear the chief say that she wanted to promote people like herself. I don't think that's a good comment. You should say we want to hire the most capable, the sharpest, the hardest working, the most virtuous, because this taxpayer deserves that. The little children in the schools, the elderly ladies, the people who are disabled, the people that are hospitalized, they need the best coming to their aid when they need it, right? We need the strongest, smartest, toughest people. I want to win. I don't want to lose a firefighter, and I don't want to lose a citizen because I was unable to perform my job. So I think it's really important that we many years ago, I thought I was a decent basketball player, and I thought I was going to play college basketball, so I tried it for the junior college, and I didn't make it. And it hurt me, and I didn't like it, and I think it was fair. But you know what? It made me come to grips, and I had to become humble and find a different direction. So I joined the U.S. Air Force, became a firefighter, right? We have to accept our limitations. We can't, I've known a handful of younger female firefighters that have been not told the truth about the job, and they really believe they're just as good. Look, I've worked with some outstanding firefighters. I worked with one firefighter that was in the U.S. military. He was a captain. He was an artillery officer. He played football for Army. That kind of guy. That was my ideal. He was one of my favorite firefighters because he was aggressive, hardworking, family man. The other thing is, too, you're taking jobs from guys that want to get married and have kids, right? You know, it's nice to put on the uniform. It's nice to have the prestige and the benefits. But when the blank hits the fan, I want the very best. For me, it's more important that I have the best people than Notre Dame has the best football players. And, you know, I love Notre Dame. I'm glad they won. But I have a lot of friends that have children. And sometimes the wife goes to work and the lady's stuck in the house. If my wife is stuck in the house and you show up with a fire company that doesn't do the job, I am going to be upset if she's hurt, right?
I mean, everything you're saying is so common sensible, and I'm sorry that it's controversial even in some circles to say what you're saying, because it's not bashing anyone or saying someone has more human dignity than another person, or, you know, should be treated differently by the law than another person. We're all equal, but under the law. But in terms of opportunities in the workplace,
well, you know,
the best person for the job is really what should be the case.
You know, I go to church I go to church often, okay? I go on Sunday. When I go to church on Sunday, you know what really bothers me? When the guy or gal up there is singing that can't sing.
Well,
why don't we put the best person there, right?
Yeah.
Or can you imagine going to a dentist that has problems?
Right.
Or a mechanic that doesn't know the difference between a metric or standard wrench? Look we have to accept our limitations. Look I'm not going to be a surgeon. I'm not going to be a singer. I'm not a musician.
But you were an awesome firefighter.
Well, I you know what? I was gifted with being 6'1", 200 pounds. I had a good father. I had fellows on the fire department. You know, I am indebted to the firefighters of the past that trained me, that were tough on me. I didn't like it at the time, but I look back in retrospect, very grateful to that. I'm thankful to all the coaches that pushed me, that taught me how to win, not to quit, right? In the U.S. military, too. I was really grateful for that. But, you know, the soldiers that freed us from the Japanese oppression in the Pacific, those were tough men. Those poor men laid it all on the line. That's the kind of guy I want in the fire department, because we have to protect our little children, our wives, our sisters, our daughters, right?
Yep.
Give me the best.
I hear you. And I think a lot of people are wondering why we don't always have that attitude when it comes to anything that we're doing, but especially protecting our families from things like deadly fires.
Well, can I say something
Please
too?
Do,
it's like, you know, Hollywood and politicians have a lot of influence, right? And a lot of times they do not suffer the consequences of their own policies. We do. The normal average Joe does, right? If you were to lose your daughter or to lose your son, and you could attribute it to a person that didn't have, and that also applies to firefighters that are overweight, that have let themselves go, that are not competent. That applies to them too, right? So we have to have a standard, and we can't lower the standard. Otherwise, we compromise the safety of the citizens. You know, it used to give me great pleasure when my firefighters, when I was a captain, we show up on scene, knock things out. So I was like a proud daddy, right? The guys doing their job really well. Or I used to see the guys working out and being really fit or really work. We have a lot of excellent firefighters on the city.
What would be your word right now for those that are out there fighting fires bravely? From some of them former colleagues of yours, to encourage them.
Well, well, first of all, you know, like there's certain rules that we live by. Like there's 18 watchouts, things that you need to be careful of, right? Then something called LCES, right? Operate safely. Like alert the captain if something's unusual happening, right? And you know, the firefighters are pretty tough. They don't need a retired captain to encourage them. There's a lot of firefighters It's kind of funny. They run to danger. You have to be a little off to some degree to be a firefighter, because I've seen some firefighters over my years. I remember one firefighter many years ago. I think his name was George Perez. There was a shaft that went probably 20, 30 feet below ground, very narrow shaft. They were building the building, and a worker fell in. Yeah. So they inverted him, and he went down. Just imagine going down a tube, and they pulled him out. That was one of the most dangerous things a firefighter could do. I've seen firefighters get up on the roof and cut without any concern roofs, right? Because firefighters just don't do brush fires. We go to high-rise fires, structure fires, people trapped in an automobile. We go to shootings, stabbings, you name it, we respond to that, right? The other thing is that, like, if I'm working solo with another firefighter and he's about the same size as me. Now, I hate to bring the police department into this, but the police department too has to hire. If you don't have a presence, a command presence, it creates a vacuum, and people are seeing that. The criminals see that and say, hey, we can take this. I remember many years ago, I was on scene of a guy that was giving 2 female police officers a hard time. My partner and myself had to subdue the guy, and then we told female officers to put the handcuffs on him. And that wasn't the first time. Another time we responded to a shooting where the number of people were shot. We were treated, and the female officers came in to help us treat the patients. I told them, we don't need you to treat the patients. Secure the perimeter, because there's a lot of gang members. One male officer showed up, and I remember I was running to the truck for some equipment, and he goes, what do you need? I said, get that crowd back. And there was a couple of Hispanic gang members. I said, get the crowd back. And he goes, consider it done. He pulled out his stick, PR-24, and he says, I want everybody back. And one guy challenged him, says, make me. And the officer hit him in the thigh. The whole crowd moved back.
Wow.
Some people are going to think it's bullying, but you know what? He made the scene safe. Not too long ago did I respond to an incident where the police didn't do that, and then it makes it unsafe for us.
Well, I'm thank you for sharing this perspective, Paul, because I think, again, it's unpopular to say it, but it's what I think a lot of people are thinking. And again, you're very even-handed about it. You're not saying the reason the fires are so catastrophic is because of the weakening of the fire force, but all of these do play a role. And it is a moment to look at and say, are we doing it? Are we set up for success in the city of Los Angeles? So thank you so much for sharing your perspective, and thank you so much for your service. It's it's helped save lives, I know, and it's an incredibly important institution, our fire department. So thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just say one last thing,
Please
is
do.
that politicians and movie people, these policies may come and hit your home, right? So your loved ones, your children, your grandchildren, your friends. So we want to give ourselves every opportunity to be successful. So recruit the best, don't lower standards. And I have no problem with the woman if she can do what the standard is. But I think if we look around, we're going to see that doesn't happen. And I have yet to meet a woman that is better than a male firefighter. And once you get a woman on the Notre Dame football team as a running back or quarterback, tackle, then you'll prove me wrong. And women have been trying this for some years. And you know what? Look at women. I love my mom. I love my wife and a daughter. So they are precious to me. And you have to sometimes tell the truth, right? Because the truth will set us free. And the truth will make things safer for everybody. We've got to come out of this like silliness, this I would just say, confusion. Anyway, Lila, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fire Chief. I'm so Fire Captain too. I'm so grateful for you coming on the show and giving us some insider background and more perspective on what's unfolding in LA right now. Thank you so much for your service.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining this live stream. We're going to be doing more of these, and a huge thank you to Paul for joining. Always, you can put your questions in comments or the chat for future live streams, and don't forget to subscribe if you are listening right now on YouTube Live and later on podcast app. We'll catch you guys next time.